you're looking online and you keep seeing this one neighborhood and geez, it seems like there's a lot of resales in there. And you know, it seems like the houses aren't very old. Why are people moving so soon? Well, this is the video for you. So I got this question actually recently, and I'm going to reference a very specific neighborhood just so you can have a very specific example. But this can pretty much be applied across the board, across different neighborhoods in Delaware. So when you're looking online at the Delaware beaches, this is the neighborhood that we're going to be referencing. It's called Peninsula Lakes. Peninsula Lakes. Now I'm shouting like that because there's lots of neighborhoods that sound exactly the same. There's Peninsula, Peninsula Lakes, Plantation Lakes, and guess what? Those are all in the Millsboro zip code, just to be completely confusing. And Peninsula and Peninsula Lakes are right beside each other. The names, I have no idea. It's crazy. I don't know. It's like naming all your children Marie, 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 Marie. So, why would people be selling so soon? So we're going to be referencing the community of Peninsula Lakes. And okay, so the number one reason people would be moving so soon is because of location. Now, this might not necessarily mean the location is bad. Generally, it just means that the location isn't right for that particular person who is selling. In this case, a lot of times we find sometimes it's because they want to be closer to the beach or farther from the beach. So for example of Peninsula Lakes, this is in what's called Millsboro, and it's locally referenced as Long Neck. So what we find is that many people will buy a property, they'll come in for the weekend and they get really excited and then they buy with the builder right away without doing a lot of research, without really checking out the area, without learning too much about the area. And so they think, oh, well, this is close to the beach, not realizing that in this case, Long Neck is about 35 minutes to the beach in the middle of the night. So if you're actually looking for the beach, that can be a bit far. It's great more so as like a boating community, but as far as being close to the beach, you can definitely be closer. So that's one thing I would say. A lot of times it's proximity to the beach, and a lot of times it's proximity to something else. Maybe it's not as close to schools or not as close to work as they had thought. So usually there's something with the location in some way. Another thing to keep in mind is that our zip codes are ginormous. They're so big. So I should have looked this up before, but the zip code for Millsboro is something like 90 square miles, something like that. It's big. It's very, very, very big. And so those three neighborhoods I mentioned, Peninsula, Peninsula Lakes, and Peninsula. So Peninsula and Peninsula Lakes are right beside each other. Now, Plantation Lakes is about 20 minutes away. And even though it's also the same zip code. And so somebody might look at that and think, oh, wow, that's got to be close. It's in the same zip code. It's got to be close. But generally it's not. And so another reason might be proximity to like the healthcare, actually. So we have a few major hospital systems, and somebody might say, oh, I thought, my doctors would be closer. I thought the hospital would be closer. And another reason might be school district. So in this specific case of Peninsula Lakes, this is an Indian River School District. And so somebody might say that they want to be in what's called Cape Henlopen School District. Yes, that's how we say it, is Cape Henlopen. And so somebody might think that's the school district. It'll be okay, it'll be fine. And then realize later, oh, I thought I was going to be in a different school district. And so that's why they're moving. So number one is location. Number two is the homeowners association in general. So homeowners rules, how much the dues are. I am not a live in a HOA kind of person. I really want to be, maybe I will be again, but many people think they can live in a homeowners association and it ends up being just way too strict for them. And that's honestly what happened to me and my husband. We were in this neighborhood only like 2 years, not the same neighborhood, another neighborhood close to it actually though. And we just realized, you know what, it's too strict for us. We can't do it. This is just not not for us. And that happens a lot. A lot of times it's too strict. Sometimes it's too costly. Sometimes the neighborhood, the fees just keep going up and up and up and up and up. And that has happened recently in Peninsula Lakes. The fees did increase recently, not by a huge amount, but sometimes people get a little scared and think, okay, well, this just increased by whatever it was, like $50, $75 or $100. But what's next? Is it going to increase again soon? And so people kind of can get scared off by the HOA. Generally, I find, like for me, it was too strict and I just couldn't handle it. Something also might be they want something that has lawn care included and it doesn't have lawn care included, for example. So, but the HOA is something that people should research more and they don't. So people a lot of times don't do research on what is a good neighborhood fit for them. So they just think all of them are the same. And so they assume, for example, that they can do short-term rentals. They assume, for example, that you can plant whatever you want, that you, there is actually a restrictive list of plants per the county. Some communities are a little more strict than others. And so people don't realize that. And they think that they're okay with a very, very strict neighborhood, where I was one of those. My husband and I were one of those, and now we have chickens. So not everything is right for everybody. So the third reason is actually, I would say, a very, 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 very popular reason. I would say it's probably the most popular reason is actually the style of the home. The style, the layout, it might not be a good fit for the people. So for example, what we see a lot of times is people who buy a townhome. And then they realize, I want a single family home. It happens a lot. I've had conversations with young buyers where I say, how long are you planning to be here? Do you think you're going to be here maybe 5 years or 10 years? And if they have little kids, the townhome might be okay now, but once they get older, they may want more space. Or many townhomes in our area, for example, do not have a primary bedroom suite, a bedroom suite on the first floor, owner's suite. A lot of times we call it ensuite. And so that layout may not be good for the long-term living in that home. A lot of times people think they will be there forever, but it won't necessarily be a good fit for them for that reason. And so a lot of times we see people they buy a duplex or a townhouse, and then they realize, oh, I'd rather be in a single family home. And that happens a lot. The other big reason is they want a bigger home. They want a smaller home. They bought too big. They bought too small. They decided they don't like this layout. They like more open concept. And sometimes they'll actually stay in the same neighborhood, but they will want to just get a different style home or a bigger home or smaller home. And it's not necessarily anything wrong with the neighborhood. They might love the neighborhood. They just need a different home for them. And that neighborhood, I've actually seen people buy different style homes a few times. They started with a townhouse and then they bought a house and then they bought the biggest house in the neighborhood. And so it's not necessarily something wrong with the neighborhood. It could be something that's great, the neighborhood. They could love it. They just need a different style home for themselves. Okay, so number 4, second homes. Sometimes someone will buy a home and they will think that they will be using it as a second home or a vacation rental, and they realize they're not getting as much use as they want. The idea of having a vacation rental, for example, sounds like a lot of fun until you actually have one. Then it's a super pain in the butt. Some people are cut out for it. They're really good at it and they enjoy it. But many people, they don't get the use out of a second home that they think they were going to. The kids might not be coming down to use the home as often as they thought they were going to. Where our job has changed and we don't have as much availability as we used to. My job has changed and you're farther away and you can't get there as much as you used to. Happens a lot. People will think they'll use a second home a lot more than they actually will, because the idea of it sounds like so much fun, right? I love being at the beach. I'm going to use my home all the time. It's like kind of like, oh, I am going to use my pool all the time. I don't know about you, but I've been to the pool twice this year. And so the idea of a second home it's something that people will sell because they aren't getting that use out of it that they think they will. Along these same lines too is somebody who thought maybe they could have a vacation rental, and then it turns out that the community regulations have changed and they can't have a vacation rental anymore. Or the community, I had somebody tell me about a neighborhood actually that I used to live in, and they said, oh, well, that person was selling because they changed the vacation rentals. And I was like, no, it's always been no vacation rentals. It's always been you had to be 6 months or more for your vacation rental or any rental at all. Any rental agreement had to be 6 months or more. So that person just didn't read the regulations of the community because it had always been like that. But some communities do change. And so somebody who maybe had plans, if it's a second home and we're not getting a lot of use at it, well, we'll rent it. And then the community regulations change and they can't rent it like they thought, or maybe they just didn't read them. And so that happens a lot as well. With the second home though, I will say, if you're a buyer and you're looking at a second home, a home that's, say I'm showing you property and we're reading up on it and doing our research and we find out it's been a second home for someone, that is a great home to buy because it's gotten very little wear and tear. On the flip side, sometimes people maybe have neglected it. They haven't done maybe the maintenance they should. But in general, a lot of times it can be a great home to buy because it's not getting that use that a primary home has gotten. I've seen homes that have been 20, 30 years old that look like they're only a few years old based on how much use the house has actually gotten. So from a buyer standpoint, that can be a great house for you to buy because that person tends to be pretty motivated to sell, and they tend to, they're not living in there. It's not filled with all sorts of stuff. It's not going to be a hard move for them because it's been a second home. They're ready to sell it. So that's a huge part of our market and a huge part of sometimes why you do see homes that are for sale. It's because it's been a second home that somebody just isn't using that they thought they would. Okay, number 5, life happens. Life changes are one of the largest reasons that someone moves. This is true nationwide. They've done the research and the data on this. This is true nationwide. The number one reason people move is to be closer to friends and family. In this neighborhood of Peninsula Lakes, and many, many neighborhoods as well, one of the reasons we see that people move is because a spouse has died. And so they no longer want to be in the house. They're sad to be in the house by themselves, and they want to be closer to family. That's a really large reason why people in our area will move. And so these life changes, like loss of a spouse, they could also be having children, or maybe their children have moved away, so they're empty nesters. Maybe they have a job change. Maybe they need to relocate because of a job. Maybe they need to relocate to go help take care of someone, help take care of a spouse or a parent. And so that is actually a large, large part of why people move. And because we do have a lot of people who maybe have moved here and retired, I think that loss of a spouse might be a little bit higher in our area than it might be other places. And it also seems like it too, because maybe it's happening in neighborhoods and you see it happen more often. And so we do see that a lot. We see job relocations. We're seeing a lot more than we used to. We used to see none, but job relocations, we're seeing a lot more recently post-COVID, because all of a sudden the employers are wanting people back in the office so they can be more productive. And so we had people who had a job hours and hours and hours away, and now all of a sudden that job wants them in the office more often. And so they have to sell their home. So life changes, somebody might have kids, somebody might be getting a divorce, somebody might have to go and take care of a parent, for example. All these life changes add up to a big reason why people end up moving nationwide. It's not just our area. That is nationwide. It's true across the board. And number 6, I know I normally give like 5 reasons, but this happened to be a 6th reason. Number 6 is it was always meant to be a short-term purchase. This happens more often than you would think. There's many people who buy short-term and they knew it was not going to be a long-term purchase for them for whatever reason. Maybe they always knew they were going to have to relocate. Maybe they always knew that they were going to need a bigger home. Maybe they always knew that this was just going to be a few years because they are someone who likes to stay in a home for a few years and then sell it, make money on the sale, and then do it again on the next house. I have a couple clients like that, which as a real estate agent is a great thing, right? So that's something that happens more often than you would think. There's a lot of people who they purchased with the idea that this was always going to be a short-term purchase for them. It was never going to be their forever home. And it was always going to be maybe just a few years, maybe just a couple years. Maybe it was always going to be a second home, and then they were going to buy their larger home at the beach, for example. Happens more often than you would think. Is it more than another neighborhood? Well, it's more than another neighborhood because Peninsula Lakes is pretty large. So it's a large neighborhood, so you're seeing quite a bit on the market. But it doesn't mean that it's a bad neighborhood. It doesn't mean that people don't like it. It doesn't mean that people like hate their neighbors, their neighborhoods are terrible and they hate the area. Usually it's a much more mundane reason than that. Usually it's one of those reasons that I mentioned. And at Peninsula Lakes, for example, we see it more than other neighborhoods, for example. One, because it's large. And two, because there are the townhomes and there are the single family homes. And so when you see those different kind of style of homes, you see it a lot more. If you're in a neighborhood that's all, single family homes, you're not going to see it as often. If you see it in a neighborhood that's all single family homes that are on one floor, all single family ranch homes, then you're going to see it way less often as well in our area. And so, like I said, every area is a little different, but across the board, generally this is true. Nationwide, it's not, people aren't moving because they hate it so much. Oh, they hate this neighborhood or whatever. Or they had their problems with the homes are falling apart. No, generally no. I've heard very, very good things about the homes in there. I haven't had clients that have had a lot of problems, but they've been very happy with the homes and the neighborhoods. It's just a little more prevalent in larger neighborhoods and in our area too, I think, because people maybe didn't do a lot of research before moving here and they were just like, oh, this is a pretty house, pretty neighborhood. And they didn't really think about what would be a good fit for them, how close to the beach they really want to be, or what school district they really want to be in, or what style home would really be a good fit for them. So I would say those are my reasons. Those are my 6 reasons. So what do you think? Do you think I'm off on this? Do you think maybe in the case of Peninsula Lakes, maybe Peninsula Lakes is a neighborhood that people are fleeing from because it's a terrible neighborhood? Or do you think life just happens? What neighborhoods are you curious about? What would you like to learn about other neighborhoods? Is there a neighborhood that maybe you're thinking you'd like to have a little bit more insider scoop on? Let me know. I'm happy to help.